Hello, everyone. I have something very special for you guys today. It is me. It is Jayme, and I have a special someone I cannot wait to introduce you to. But let me tell you what is exactly happening right now. I've got my notes, and we are going to get into it. So, the FIFA World Cup. You all know that I've been talking about it. I've been talking about it since last year on Substack, on LinkedIn, inside of emails, inside of the brand activations. The World Cup is coming. The World Cup is coming. So the FIFA World Cup 2026 kicks off in June. So we are less than 30 days of filming this, 30 days out. And it's going to be across 16 cities in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And those U.S. cities are carrying some of the most complex operational brand activations that we have ever seen. And so we are so excited that today we are going to be discussing Boston, Massachusetts, Dallas, Texas, Miami, Florida. All right. You guys ready? Now, for those who may not know who I am Jayme Washington. I am a global CMO. I also am a FIFA-credentialed experiential advisor for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I am the founder of WashTone Media and the CMO Connect, and I have spent the last 25 years in advising brands from RCA Records all the way to Coca-Cola. And I am just so excited. I have so many notes of what we are going to be talking about today. And I call it global event intelligence. And I think when we talk about global event intelligence, it's intentional. This is not just a sports commentary. Like, I know I've worked on the activation inside of the Super Bowl, but I never have been able to actually take you guys with me behind the scenes. And so it actually changes today. We're going to share some of the things that are happening, boots on the ground. We are going to share some of those things with you because I believe that the FIFA World Cup 2026 is not a stadium event. It is not a marketing event. It is what I call a movement event because you have thousands of people that are, tens of thousands of people that are coming in one location at one given time for one specific purpose. And if you are a brand and you are around what I like to call the corridor, the stadium corridor, if you are around during this demand surge and you can offer your product, your service to the demand, like the people are already there. That's why I say this is not a marketing event. The people, the traffic, it's already there. But if your product can align with what they need while they're in your stadium area, you will be successful. And if I was a betting girl, I would bet money that we are going to hear of the no-name small brand that is going to come on the other side of this as a $1 million brand because they took the advice that we are going to give, they're going to execute it, and the demand is there. They're going to have the product, the service for that audience, and that's going to be the story. All right, guys. So on today, I'm so excited. You guys see this handsome guy that I got, and it's not my husband. We got somebody. But I am so excited to share with you all that I have the amazing Andrew. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself, but Andrew is my collaborator. He is what we call in my industry a brand activation field producer. So Andrew is someone that is boots on the ground, and he goes and he actually films, talks to, that targeted audience. He brings back the intel that a global CMO, so someone that is in my seat or those that I advise CMOs. So he is someone we would deploy to actually physically go to the location that we are going to have an activation to tell us, what is it like? What is the energy? What are the people like? What is the culture? What is it that they want? Don't tell us just what the media is saying. We want to know what the what we call either the fans, the customer, or the client. Tell us the intel of what they want. We call it field intelligence. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. He can tell you more about who he is. And then we're going to get into what we call a brief. Okay, Andrew, your turn.
Great. Thank you, Jayme. It's a pleasure to be able to partner with you here, and thanks for the invitation to speak on the World Cup. I'm excited to be able to share some of my experience and insight for everyone. I would say, you're calling me the field producer. You could think of me as the soccer nerd, the cultural obsessive. Since I was young, I've loved the game of soccer growing up in the Philadelphia area, not only playing it, being a coach at the youth and high school level, but the thing I love about this game and that we'll bring out in our discussion today is the global nature of it and the different dimensions of life and just what it means to people. So under Because Football Media, there's my media brand. I call myself a soccer storyteller, also host a podcast. It's a little bit more on the business side of how do clubs and brands within the soccer space market, tell stories, put butts in seats at stadiums, build clubs, and really tap into community. For me, it all comes back to what the game means to people. And I know that a lot of the people listening will be much more familiar with March Madness and the Super Bowl, college football. I think those are great examples that we can use. But when it comes to soccer, just on a global level, it's unprecedented. I know there was a lot of great attention and a lot of excitement around the Olympics, the Winter Olympics earlier this year. I don't think that is even anywhere close to culturally or the scale of what we're going to see with the World Cup. So I'm excited to kind of share some of that. I think what's helped me specifically to be able to speak on these cities is that I've been doing a project, basically a road trip to all of these host cities. I've been to 13 of the 16 host cities so far to tell the stories of their local soccer communities, players, fans, coaches, league founders, soccer moms, everybody in between at all levels of the game, and get a sense of, how people are feeling about the tournament, but also the important local stories that they have to share. And so I think it's really fascinating. I think although I bring a global context and having told stories and explored this game, and shared that long form on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok, I've been fortunate to be to nearly 20 countries over the past few years. The great thing about this tournament that we're going to have in North America, and particularly in the U.S., is we have the most diverse soccer culture and community in the world. And we're going to get a little bit into what I mean by that. But excited to be here and try to give people some insight and hope make this, really the best World Cup that we've ever seen and do a great job of it here in North America.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Andrew. We're so happy to have you. So today, you all, we're not here to tell you that we're excited about FIFA, because FIFA World Cup, we are all excited. And we're not here to just talk about things that you've already heard, because you can Google where the host cities are, but we want to share like what the brands, what the operators, what the fans, um, what the cities are carrying, like what is that weight? And we've heard stories, and we want to bring out a cohesive look, and we're going to try to break this down into three. We're going to talk about three cities, and Andrew's going to share some of the boots on the ground. I'm going to share more of the boardroom and what I've heard from the brands as an experiential director, and we will see where the chips fall. So first of all, like I said, and I will continue to say, FIFA 2026 to me is not just about the sports. It's every city tells a different story, and they have a different version of that story. And I would love to start with Boston. Boston, Massachusetts, because that is where I live. Boston is my hometown. But over on Substack, I am so grateful that it has grown from 7,000 subscribers to when I started talking about FIFA in November, we were at about 7,000 subscribers, and it's grown to about 12,000 subscribers.
That's awesome.
Just talking, yeah, Andrew, just talking about about brands activating at a global event. you know?
Mhm.
And so one of those wonderful subscribers wrote me and said, Jayme, Foxborough is not a suburb of Boston. She called it something else. I don't know. So I'm sure people will correct me, but until I have better understanding of that, I will continue, Andrew, to say that
Yeah,
Foxborough.
I mean, I was there. I would call it a like more or less suburb, right? It's a town that's outside of the city, you know. So I don't know what else you call it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So we're gonna call it what we've been calling it. It is a suburb. You travel about, on a good day,
Hmm.
it's about an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 13 minutes on a good day. We have Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. That is the home of the New England Patriots. Now, I know I'm just gonna go right into it. And then I'm gonna let Andrew kind of talk about it as well. One of the main issues that I have as a global brand activation advisor, and I feel what is my credibility? I have advised on almost $1 billion in activation budget. I'm at about 776 million. I have also over 6 continents. Um, I'm at 43 global activations from the Super Bowl to Olympics to Fashion Week. So that is my credentials. So I'm going to put that out there first. Based upon what I know, I am very concerned with these two areas that we have.
Hmm.
The activation for the fan festival. Every host city is supposed to have a location for the fans, and it is called the Fan Festival. Here in Boston, our fan festival is located at Boston City Hall Plaza. Boston and Foxborough are two different areas. It is 27.4 miles away. So we have here in Boston what I'm calling two different activation areas. So it's unfortunate that if you are a fan with a ticket,
Hmm.
you're not going to really be able to enjoy the fan festival because you need to get to the stadium. But as of now, we are not sure what activations are going to be at the stadium. So there's also a lot of chatter about what the governor and the mayor, who I'm very fond of. I am very fond of Mayor Wu. I am very fond of Governor Healy. There's a lot of things, unfortunately, in the media that has they have inherited. Because
Hmm.
that's another thing, Andrew, that I want to make sure that we bring out is that the the different host cities and how you have to go before FIFA International, big FIFA is what we call it,
Hmm.
in order to become, a
Right.
host city and all of those things. And so I feel like this first episode, we're going to have to really educate the audience on how all of these things work as we kind of get into Boston, Dallas, and Miami. So I'd like to turn it over to you. Can you just, in your own way, being like you said, an advocate of soccer, give us a little bit about how does this like work with FIFA just even deciding which, is it every 3 years, every 4 years? Just give the audience your perspective
Hmm.
on how all of this even comes about.
Yeah, yeah. So the World Cup is every 4 years, right? So that's a lot similar to the Olympics. That's dependable. Same with the Women's World Cup, which is actually I mean next summer in Brazil. So, keep that in your back pocket too. We'll be, I'm going to give a teaser for our podcast series on the Women's World Cup in Brazil, right? Next year, we're getting ready for that, Jamie. So
Okay, let's go,
every
let's
4 year,
go.
yep, right. Caipirinhas on the beach in Rio. Sound good, everybody? So, so yeah, so Yeah, FIFA based in Switzerland, right? They've been running the World Cup since 1930. And so it is every 4 years. It is important. You make that point, Jayme, as well, the distinction. So the local host committees in all 16 host cities, they're essentially came together with influential members of business circles, of government, right? And said, hey, we want to bring the World Cup here. We know what it can do for our city and our region. And then they had to essentially put together, a bid package and process to FIFA, and then FIFA selects. So I know that, Jayme, you would know much better than I how a lot of the intricacies of licensing and things like that is working. That's been a big piece. But it is important to note that there is FIFA corporate. They're based in Geneva, Switzerland, but also have an HQ in Miami. But these host committees are local, right? And they're more or less just licensing the ability from FIFA to say we are the official host committee. But it is up to them to do, basically, from my understanding, everything outside of the stadiums, right? Including those fan fests, as you mentioned. I think the fan fest part is important because we don't really have that cultural equivalent in the US, but in global soccer, it is very common. Is what these will be is it's going to be huge outdoor venues, big screens. They're going to have food options, concerts. A lot of cities are doing concert series with a lot of very notable local and international acts. And so fans are looking at, if they can't afford a ticket or they can't get into the stadium, the next best thing and that hope is to be part of this fan fest. So, and those are happening in all the cities. But as we'll discuss through the series, there are a lot of different approaches that the host committees are taking based on their areas, and that's probably going to be very important to how brands are going to activate and choose to choose their strategy based on each area.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. And I appreciate that. I think I'll just tell the audience, you and I were kind of talking about like this thesis and what's the easiest way to like break this down. And so I'm okay with telling them. I feel like we're gonna do the good, the bad, the ugly. And what we've tried to do, everyone, is take facts and bring it to you as what we call editorial intelligence. I want you all to think of this as just behind the scenes, as if, we are in a boardroom, we're in a strategy session, and Andrew and I are talking about his field intelligence, and I'm talking more about editorial intelligence. And this is what brings that global event intelligence all in one. This is the things that you all may not see. It's very raw, and we're doing this purposely because we could so easily send this to our team and say, hey, add this, add this. And they probably will do that with the reels and the shorts, but we want to make sure that you all are getting the facts because I think it's very important. Number one, for brands that are going to activate in and around a host city, also for the fans to know, if I have a ticket to here, where should I go for this activation? What should I be looking out for if I'm parking here? Is it a 5-minute walk? Is it a 30-minute walk? Is it an hour walk? What are my expectations? What should I expect from the culture? And so that's what we want to make sure that we bring out. And I want to talk about Boston. So first, Andrew, I'll let you go first with the good. When you visited my beautiful city, tell us what you experienced. And I just want to talk about just coming to one of the oldest cities
Mm-hmm.
in the country. You know, this is where the Brits are coming. The Brits are
Yes,
coming.
and they
Like,
are coming back again this
yeah,
summer.
right. And this is Boston. This is Boston. Very old school, a lot of history,
Mhm.
for the United States of America as a country. So tell us, what was it like?
Yeah, I feel like coming from Philadelphia, there's some similarities, right? And being like a historical East Coast city that has, at least for the US, we could say has a history of 350 years, right? roughly, or will be 250 officially this summer. But I think the thing that sticks out, and it manifests with the soccer, it might be something to keep in mind here, as you were saying, the difference between the Fan Fest in Boston and the distance to Foxborough is that you kind of have this, like, yes, Boston is the hub, but you can kind of almost look at a larger regional New England identity, right? Which was kind of the frame that I took. I did probably went everywhere from, I guess you could say, Hartford, Connecticut in the south, up to Maine, out to Western Massachusetts, over to Boston. And so I took this range, and then from that did like a 90-minute documentary series and a lot of other stories on that. And so where I found was, like, you do have this rich history that all of these little pockets have, but there is an overall regional identity as New Englanders. But then, especially now, we're seeing through the soccer with different levels of the game. We have the New England Revolution, who actually play in Foxborough, right? And they do traditionally have one of the highest attendances in the league in MLS. But then we've got a lot of other teams that are representing Hartford specifically, and representing like Pawtucket and Providence or Rhode Island, all the way up to Maine. So it's like everyone's like, yes, we're New Englanders, but then there's these more specific local pieces, which a lot of the soccer teams now are really kind of tapping into in that sort of identity. So I think you have both, and I think that's being reflected a little bit even in where fans will be. Of course, Boston would be the priority, but I know, for example, the Scotland fans, they're going to be a hit. They're going to be there with their kilts and their bagpipes, and they'll be playing in Foxborough. But their official supporters group is going to be based in Providence, Rhode Island, right? It's like they decided to go with that. So I think that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me. But yes, you have an abundance of great history of stories. We could technically say that more or less the first ever soccer game played in the U.S. was in Boston in like the 1860s. Now, if you talk to an American football fan and a rugby fan, they all kind of trace the origins to that day. So it's a little bit, can cause debate, but you have the history. You have, of course, like, all the educational institutions, you have tech in the medical field, you have all of that. And then with the soccer, you have a larger regional identity, but then a lot of like teams that are doing a great job of tapping into their local ecosystem right now.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. And when you what do you feel like the culture was like? Did you visit any of, like a local soccer game, a local pub? We're known for our lobster, and, like,
Mm.
can you tell us a little bit more about, like, what you experienced with the fans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sense I got is, that New Englanders and people up in the area, they are gritty, right? There's a toughness there, but also like can be so warm and like really love their community. And I think, again, that's where kind of these little more local identities are coming into play here. So there is that local pride. I think that, if we look at the other sports in New England, these fans are used to success, right? So they
Okay.
have a high standard for championships and trophies, and so that's
Oh,
a big
yes.
piece of it, right?
Oh,
Um,
yes.
whichever sport you want to look at, right? And
That's
so
right.
and then there's like that tradition that goes along with it. So I feel like fans in the area, that there's a lot of participation in the game. There is the history, there's tradition, there's success. So I again, I don't know how that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts of how brands can take how to connect in that way. But that was certainly something that had stuck out to me, is that there's a bit of that toughness for sure, but then everybody really really has each other's back, and they want winners.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And we are a city of winners, with the Patriots, with the Red Sox, with the Boston Celtics, the
And that's
Boston
hard for me to say. Again,
Bruins.
Philly got Eagles and the Sixers and all that, but like you can't argue with some of the facts.
Okay, but
Yeah,
the facts are the facts.
yeah.
Yes, but I also, on a brand perspective, Boston feels global, especially here on the East Coast, because you have New York and you have Boston, you have Hartford, Connecticut. It's a staple around the world. People people know of Boston. They know of the history. They may not know everything, but they know about like the history. You know, we've got Harvard, we have MIT, we have a lot of biotech, finance. You have like this elite international name recognition.
Mm.
So, and then like you said, we've got the strong sports culture, which during the games we have. So when the World Cup is here, we also have a basketball tournament that's going to be here as well. We have Sail Boston, which are
Mm.
tall ships. They're going to be here. And we also are going to be celebrating the 250th birthday of our country. And we have a lot going
Mm.
on, and because Boston feels global, I am not sure if those that were planning all of this really looked at the calendar, because with all of what I call mega events happening in one ecosystem, with the brands that I, help, especially when we're talking about the corridor framework, it the corridor framework actually starts from when a fan, we'll just say fan, because it could be a client. So if I was working with a client and they had a big conference like HubSpot, they have this big conference called Inbound. And
Okay.
so if I was working with HubSpot and we wanted to talk about that corridor framework, we look at where the fan, but for this example, I'm just going to say fan. We look at where the fan lands, so where they land, where their feet hit the soil, all the way to where the conference, the stadium, where the activity is going to be.
Mhm.
So the work that a little different for I'll just use one of the tier one sponsors since I'm a experiential director. In a normal perfect world, Boston, I would have looked at all the tier one sponsors and I would automatically known, okay, we activate at least 2 to 3 miles from the stadium. So I would have looked at Gillette Stadium, and there's this huge parking lot that's across the street from Gillette Stadium. And I was under the assumption, when we talk about Dallas, but I was under the assumption, similar to Dallas, that we were going to use this big open lot that we in Foxborough have used for other events. There was like a race car conference at the stadium. We've had other events at the stadium, and they use this huge parking lot across. Also for Christmas, it's where the drive-through lights. It's
Mm.
where
Okay. Yeah.
everyone comes. It's like
Yeah.
one of those. I'll find out what the square footage is, but nonetheless, to in my mind, as a brand activation advisor, that's where my mind was. Okay, so I know exactly where we want the fan to land. Or you look at the stadium where they're gonna, there's the seat. Okay, so it's like,
Mm.
okay. So then I look at Boston Logan, Boston Logan to Gillette Stadium, and that is around 35 miles. Okay, so anything in between that area is actually a corridor, and
Okay.
is the stadium corridor.
Mm.
Or if they were going to a conference, it'd be the conference corridor, but it's still that economic corridor, because what happens is the fan, the client, the customer, the attendee can have a touch point at any brand, any restaurant. To me, restaurants, local mom and pop shop, local sub shop, um, anything that's educational, anything. They can touch anything. If it's a college, university, nonprofit, anything that is between even if they come via train, it's from when they touch
Mhm.
down or land or get off, however they arrived in the city, there to the stadium. That is your economic opportunity. So if you have a mom and pop shop in between there, demand surge, but closer to the stadium, is where you see the demand surge.
Hmm.
And so what I said on another podcast, uh, with some a few key CEOs and CMOs, I said to them, and I do mean this when we talk about infrastructure, my concern was the infrastructure of the mom and pop shops. And I asked this question and I will continue to ask it because my question has yet to be answered, Andrew. And the question that I proposed to this body of individuals was, what do you do when you have 65,000 people leaving an event and 3,000 of them would like a sub, and they decide they're going to order via DoorDash, but the local mom and pop sub shop that's inside of the corridor all of a sudden receives 3,000 orders that need
Hmm.
to be filled in 36 minutes. What happens to that mom and pop shop? Because failure is not because they didn't have the traffic, because that's a marketing event. A marketing event, you need traffic. They don't fail because of traffic, Andrew. They fail because they were not properly trained with proper infrastructure. They don't have the manpower. They didn't have the
Yeah.
infrastructure of their systems.
Yeah.
They didn't know to what to do. So therefore they have 3,000 orders that need to be filled in 36 minutes. And there is no, I can go to the grocery store down the street to go buy extra cheese because I don't have enough cheese to fill all of these orders. And that is my concern, that the local brands, the local mom and pop, the mid operators are not being properly educated on, like you said, this global event that no one has seen in our generation. I mean, the last
Hmm.
time FIFA came was over 30 years ago.
Sure.
And can you speak to maybe what you noticed just in Boston? Um, yeah, what would be what you noticed to what you believe may occur when FIFA World Cup comes
Yeah.
to
Well,
Boston?
what you're telling the story about the sub shop reminds me 2 summers ago, I was in Germany for the European Championship. So that's like the World Cup, but just of Europe, right? So
Okay.
it's the top, I don't know, 24 teams in Europe. And it was Scotland, Germany match in Cologne, Germany. And I was there. I didn't have tickets for the game. I was just, again, soaking up the atmosphere with all the fans. It was great. So many public spaces just to hang out. It was more of the fan fest type of vibe, right? Except it was
Okay.
all local bars and things.
Mm,
And by 11 a.m., you couldn't get a cold beer anywhere because they were just pulling it out of the, like, wherever they could get it, getting deliveries throughout the day. And I'm talking to people who are running some of the bars and the little corner stores and things. And they're like, yeah, we've just had crazy, crazy demand. And that's just having access to inventory, right? They didn't have to do anything. They just open it and you're ready to go. But that reminded me of that. I think when I think of what I saw around Foxborough is, now I had come more from kind of like, not from the Boston way, but it's like you're just driving through forest essentially, and then all of a sudden you're at the stadium. And there are some, as I recall, some like restaurants and bars close there in a smaller parking lot on the one side. There's some across the busier road. There's some retail, some different big box stores and things, but there's a little bit of an infrastructure like right at the stadium for fans. But
mhm.
my thought would be, yeah, what happens maybe earlier in the day? Are they expecting, if it's a 3 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock game, like where are those fans going to be earlier? And I know that a few weeks ago they had a France versus Brazil exhibition match, and I saw a lot of videos of people who were struggling to get from Boston, to where people were basically trying to Uber from Boston, were so blocked off with traffic they ended up walking miles and miles just to get there. So hopefully we sort that out on the fan side. I think there may be, you would know better, there may be a regional train line that goes, but it seemed to me in comparison with some other places, they can support some of that fan demand on the day. But my thought was, where's the spillover going to go, either before or immediately after the game? Because to your point with the DoorDash orders or whatever it is, there's going to be the surge in demand for Uber. So it's one thing if you deliver 60,000 people over 6 hours, but they're all ready to go after that 90-minute game. And what happens then? So I think that was kind of more my thought, that it seems so far away in that sense. And, again, that can create some definite logistical challenges. I will say, I don't think Boston is alone in that. Particularly, but yeah, it
Mhm.
just seemed Foxborough just seemed a little bit isolated, and so I don't know how that looks like on the game day, and then that factors into the energy and kind of the passion a bit too, if there's some friction, right, in the fan experience.
Mhm. Mhm. And I like what you just brought out with the fans. There's certain things they're going to need, transportation, also food. Who wants a hot beer?
Hmm.
And so if it was me and I was advising one of the mid operators on one of the corridors, that is what I would be doing right now. I would be actively, if I was a sub shop, I would be actively uh, connecting with a baker so that, and I also would change my menu. If it was one thing I
Hmm.
would do, if I was a restaurant, if I was a sub shop, if I served any type of food, I would change my menu for FIFA World Cup right now. You do not want thousands of people coming in to order and having 30 different options. You don't
Good
want
point.
it, you don't
Yeah.
need it. You just don't. You just don't. Can you speak to when you were like, boots on the ground, going to all of these different host cities, you also went to a few of the games. Can you just kind of explain what happens as soon as the game is over? Like, what does that feel like? And what is usually what people want to do, from those that are on the winning side to those that are on the losing side?
Hmm.
Speak to that.
Yeah, well, I think yeah, it's definitely depends on how your country is done, right, or the team you're supporting has done. I think it could vary a little bit. I mean, one thing that people should know with this World Cup is that, for at least like in Eastern time zone, right, games are going to be starting at noon and going until midnight, right? You're going to have a 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 Eastern every day for like the first 2.5 weeks of the tournament, and then it spaces out a little bit with like those playoff knockout rounds. Um, so I think a little bit it depends. A fan's experience for a noon game is going to be different than the 9 p.m. But in general, I would say there is going to be an average of people are going to want to get something before the games, food, drink, but then after, if it's like, say you're one of those early kickoffs, well, then how quickly can we either get back to Boston to be around the atmosphere a little bit, right? Or find an area with some bars and restaurants we can walk around, still feel the energy of the tournament out in the street, and then, be able to fuel up right after being in the sun or being in the stadium. So I think it would depend a little bit, but in general, there's going to be those people want to get back. And then I think that comes back to like, what is the local infrastructure like to be able to support? Okay, do people, they're going to have to wait out some of the ride shares and the Ubers. So like, is there something for them to do? Are there some local bars, restaurants? Are they going to be ready to say, hey, like just hang out, spend the day with us and get your car back to the city later? Um, so I think particularly in the group stages, right? So we're talking about the first 2.5 weeks. That's the biggest and most intense party part, because you got 4 games a day, and everybody pretty much still has a shot, right? Every game you go in, the odds of your team going forward can change. But again, for most of the countries in this World Cup, they're not necessarily expecting to win it. You've got your handful of favorites, but it's like, if you use the March Madness example, it's, if you're a 16 seed, you win one game and go on, you can have a great time, and it can mean so much. So it's similar with a lot of these countries that are going to be involved. Just participating in the World Cup is, Haiti is going to play in Boston. They haven't been in a World Cup in 50 years. The Congo has a
Mhm,
similar story. Iraq is first time. Cape Verde, Curacao, Uzbekistan, Jordan, all first time countries, right? Just to be there, is Scotland hasn't been there in I think 30 something years. So they can't wait, right? Again, it's a generational opportunity. So I think people do have to think, and you and I have spoken about this before, it's not your typical in and out. Like people want to marinate, right?
Mhm.
They want to be spending time, and that's the nature of soccer is you're all together, and that's where you find that energy, and it's everybody's got their jerseys and whatever they wear and their flags and whatever it is. So yeah, it's something that people want to really season, in the experience, and it's not just quick in and out. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And I like what you mentioned about the fans because that's we'll start with some of the bad now with what's happening here in Boston is the brands they want the dwell time,
Mm,
because when there's the dwell time, and usually it's about a 3 hour before the 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 game. So if we have a 6 o'clock game, we expect fans, and most of the times we expect the ticketed fans to show up between 3 to 2 hours before the game. There are, you'll see Coca-Cola with little games for,
hmm
um, not only the 45-year-old father, but his 11-year-old, 12-year-old son, because we want the LTV to be generational, and LTV is lifetime value. So we may not necessarily, the brand may not necessarily focus on the one who can make the purchase. It's not only that person, which I would say the 45-year-old father, but it is also his 11, 12-year-old son. We need to create a core memory so that he will always remember
hmm
Coca-Cola in his mind as this great brand because now it's connected to a core memory. I went to, FIFA World Cup with my dad. We had this experience. I went to Coca-Cola's activation, although he may not even know what an activation is, but he will remember. I played on an Coca-Cola when our activation in Dubai. Several interactive screens, little areas inside where you were able to, play a little soccer game. It was just little
mm,
activities, but you were immersed into the brand. And, you'll see that with like Frito-Lay. You'll see that with Unilever, Dove. I'm excited to see what they are going to do as well. But the problem, unfortunately, that we have, and I'm going to bring this up, and people can Google true editorials that have been published about Boston.
mm,
One was that tailgating ban. Boston had said that there was going to be no tailgating. Boston did not want anyone without a ticket to come to the stadium. They also had 20,000 parking spots. They have decreased it by 15,000. So now there are only 5,000 parking spots. Also, as we have mentioned, the Fan Festival is going to be at City Hall Plaza, but the game is played in Gillette Stadium. And what else do we have to say? Oh, we also have a budget problem where the budget that was supposed to be raised by Boston for pre-activation, unfortunately, there was funding disputes, there was licensing threats, where that licensing threat was there was a $7.8 million licensing fee that needed to be paid for security, and the town of Foxborough said they were not going to pay it.
yeah, that one. There's a lot
Yeah,
of news on that. A lot of attention on that in soccer circles when that was kicking around. Yeah,
might as well talk about it.
yeah.
So what was your take on in the soccer circles? What was your take, Andrew, on it? And then I'll talk about it on a How on a corporate
Yeah.
side, what was your
Yeah,
take
I
on it?
think I think on the soccer side was, and you're gonna have the details in front of you, and you'll be able to spell it out for everybody, Jamie. But yeah, it was like it was honestly the fact that it was news was kind of shocking. Like, why is first of all this amount of money being an issue in comparison to the figures that we've seen and reported? And then it was a little bit of chicken and egg, again, and that's why I'm not going to go too far into it with my knowledge, but I'm like, hey, who's really kind of at fault here? Is the local town just trying to like flex it for some reason, or is this really a challenge for them? And what's kind of the thoughts? How does this normally go? It's the type of thing that you never hear about, right? As a fan, it just gets done. It gets taken care of, and I think it's just been one of those that there have been like big picture things with this tournament that we don't normally have to think about with a global sporting event. So I think it just added a little bit there, like, okay, and now is it even going to happen in Boston, right? Like there was a little bit of that thought. Did I think there was any fear of that changing? No, like, and anybody who probably knew was going on, but it was just like, what, how is this even a thing? We weren't aware that this was something that had to be thought about.
Yeah, Andrew. And that's why I'm so excited that we're having this series because it's the behind the scenes. It's so much that goes on to even put on a concert or to even put on the World Cup, to put on, I mean, an event on a sponsorship side. It's so much, but you want to do your due diligence so that the fans can have the best experience. And so on a corporate side, I'll just share this. There is a reason why you go to pitch. I think it was 2018, 2019 when we knew where the 2026 game. Do you know that exact date? I'll definitely ask someone to look it up. But do you know
Like
the
when it was
exact date?
awarded or they announced the U.S. was getting it. Yeah, I want to. For some reason, I keep saying we've had 7 years that we've known about this. So I think it's 7 or 8 years ago that it was announced the U.S. is hosting. Now we didn't know the cities yet
Mhm.
at that time, but we knew that U.S., Mexico, Canada had made that joint bid and that they would be hosting.
Okay. 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 That's good. That's good to know. So usually the governance when something like that happens, and now I'm gonna go take y'all all the way back to when I was working with RCA Records. If Beyonce is on tour, well, I just love Beyonce. I did not work with Beyonce. I work with Justin Timberlake, so I'll just talk about Justin. So if when Justin was on tour, Andrew, RCA Records rented or leased the stadium. So so it's a lease, it's a contract.
Hmm.
And so that stadium became the property of Justin Timberlake. And so that's why you hear sometimes that celebrities have to have like, a 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, $100 million policy, insurance policy
Sure.
because and this is why. And some people are like, well, that's a stadium. I'm sure the stadium and the owners have insurance. Nope. When when a star, just let's just go back to Justin. So when Justin would go on tour, and let's say it's 40 cities all over the world, every place he was going to perform, when he stepped on that stage,
Yeah.
it was actually his property. And it not only was it his property, it was also sometimes RCA's property and the sponsor's property, so that they had exclusive rights while he was there for an extended period of time. And then when that extended period of time ends, and that's why they are usually very, very strict with good night, everybody, when
Mm.
they say good night.
Limited
And the
the
show,
encores are built in. You think you're getting the extra, but they're like, nope, nope. We know that
oh,
our noise ordinances, all that stuff, that's planned out.
exactly. But there's also a licensing agreement, and it has a timestamp on it, and you don't want to go over that time. And and the reason that I bring that out is because there's various different sponsors and then, so but that takes a lot of time to prepare. So that's why usually behind the scenes 2 years that your artist is going to go on tour because it's so much logistics that has to happen behind the scenes. So 7 years, let's go now over here. The the contract for the host city for Boston, it now I only heard about it. I have not seen it, but I have government officials that have seen it. So this information that I'm giving everyone is coming from government officials. The actual contract had the Kraft Group, so Bob Kraft had the Kraft Group. It also had FIFA World Cup Boston, which is a private entity with a Delaware address, and it is also licensed in Delaware. So this is actually a private event. It is a private event. And I was very shocked to find that out, that FIFA World Cup is not a city, it is not a state event. It is a private event. And so anytime also, because I live here I live here in Boston and I live in Foxborough, anytime there is an event at Gillette Stadium, the town has never paid for security or for any type of licensing fee. So the town was very shocked to find out that FIFA wanted them to pay the $7.9 million licensing fee because it is something they have never done since the existence of Gillette Stadium. So if anyone rents it out, even when the Patriots play, and you need extra detail, you need extra security, that comes from the Kraft Group. It also comes from the New England Patriots or the Revolutions, whomever is playing and their partners, sponsors, it comes from them. So now you all know what happened, and that is why the town said, absolutely not. We are not paying it. We've never paid it. Whoever signed the dotted line should pay. And that is when we unfortunately found out that FIFA Boston World Cup only had $2 million in their account when at that time they were supposed to have roughly at least 70 million. And that is all. You can look that up. It is in state documents, city documents. You can look it up. It is all there. And what makes me so sad is it was a governance issue that should have been handled years ago, so that the fan can have the best experience and not have to have the experience of a heart palpitation of, oh my goodness, I've already purchased tickets for Boston. Are you saying that it may not happen? So now you know. And that was the bad and the ugly
Yeah, I would say
on Boston.
that'd be going into that category, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's something that we call a governance fragmentation, and it should have never happened. But before we, hop off of Boston, any final thoughts, Andrew, on, what fans should, what they should expect coming to Boston for the World Cup?
Yeah, no, I think it's still, we've talked about some of the challenges and the day to day. I think you've got a lot of great countries, a lot of passionate fans that will be coming through Boston. There's going to be a couple of the knockout rounds too. So we're going to see some really high stakes matches. You have an area that is a really diverse, rich soccer tradition. And, Foxborough, although it wasn't the same exact stadium, it was the same location, hosted the 94 World Cup. They've hosted the first ever MLS Cup in 96. They hosted the Women's World Cup. So, like, there's a lot of, it's got to be up there around the country in terms of that pedigree. And so this is kind of just the latest chapter in that, which I think is cool. And we step back to think about that. So I think that's key. And then I'll be really interested to see, as we mentioned, Boston, obviously the main hub, Foxborough for games, but then there is that regional identity where everybody's going to be celebrating the game in their way. I think will be interesting to see as well. It doesn't necessarily just have to be the main host cities that can make something happen. And so I think that'll be great too. And, we'll see if it is in the cards for me to be able to get up there. It was on that short list of places to be able to go. And there's a lot of great soccer at all levels. So it's just another chapter in that story.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I love that, Andrew. I love that. And I would say to, you know, it's something that I've been saying to my clients, and I also would say it to you all as well. If you are activating in Boston, you still have time. You still have time, but you need to choose where you're going to activate and where you're going to focus. If you're going to focus on the fan festival corridor, well, that section of the corridor, focus on that. Think about tailgating. Think about minimizing your menu. Think about how the traffic is going to travel. If it's going to be from the hotel, where their hotel stays are, to the fan festival location. And if you can be on just that corridor where the demand surge is going to be, I would make sure that I'm in that area. Also, make sure that your Google your Google My Business is up to date with all of your contact information. And if you need any more support, we'll have some things inside of the show notes where you can get, a little bit more support. But we are excited for Boston. And I still think, even with the good, the bad, and the ugly, Boston is still going to have a good game because of the energy, as Andrew
Mm-hmm.
has let us know here. There are fans from Cape Verde, or
Yeah, it's
I
going to be
have
awesome. Yep. Big
how
Haitian
many years?
community, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
Haiti,
I
it's
think
been 50 years for Cape Verde. It's their first ever, right? First ever tournament. Yeah, huge Brazilian population. Obviously, it's no secret, Brazil's status and big Portuguese communities. We highlighted a lot of really great Portuguese American social clubs, and they're so engaged in soccer in the area. Yeah, there's a ton of great groups that are going to be showing out for the tournament. So you see it around Boston. Like, you see people wearing jerseys and stickers on their car and all that. You don't always see it in a lot of places, but in Boston that really stuck out. So yeah.
so excited. So excited. So excited. So excited. So, all right, we are going to go over to Dallas. And Andrew, I don't know if your headphones are going in and out, but your volume just went like low over on my
Okay.
side. It may
Okay.
be perfect over on yours, but if you want to check that, and I'll introduce Dallas.
Like, when I'm talking, the level is kind of going down. Is that what you mean?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, like I was able to hear you
No.
very clearly, but
Okay.
now it's like the levels. I know sometimes sometimes your headphones can go in and out. Who knows?
Gotcha. All right. Still about the same now as I'm talking?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me
People can see that
try.
we are live. I have
Yeah.
another client that's in the UK, and he now uses the plug-in ones because he's like, these right here, they will fail you every single time.
Gotcha. I know. I do have. So the thing though is that my mic is separate. My mic is like a plug-in USB mic that I'm using.
Okay, sure.
So
So as long as the recording works, because I just wanted to just let you
no,
know.
I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
And let me try. I could try to just refresh real quick to see if that's, and we should be able to stay in. Okay. I'm going to give that a try. Just reload this.
Okay, sure. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna just keep going. I'm gonna
Cool.
intro, oh, Dallas, Texas. Okay, everybody. While we work with Andrew, he's gonna do a little refreshing. We're gonna talk about Dallas, Texas. Let's get to it. So Dallas is the most enterprise ready city in the tournament. I mean, this yet again, this is what's been put out in the world that Dallas is the most enterprise ready city in the tournament. This is the environment where everyone wants to be. Dallas is built for corporate sponsors, enterprise brands because of their large activation budget. They also have a huge fan festival area that they're actually calling a park, Fan Festival Park. And it is one for the records, and I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew because there's something because I'm from the South. For those that know, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and we used to always say everything is big in Texas. So this does not surprise me that Texas is going all out. But I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew. He's back now. Check his mic, see how it's going. Andrew, you with me?
Yep. I'm here. Am I coming through all right? Are we better?
It's
We hope
better.
so.
It is.
Okay. All
It's
right. Good
better. It's
stuff.
better.
Good
Okay.
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you were saying they're most enterprise ready, right? Dallas. I certainly found that of the 13 cities I've been to, whether it was the average fan at a field somewhere or the businesses around and we did a collaboration with Visit Dallas, right? The DMO, the travel and tours organization there, and their Perot Museum, their big natural science museum has a big soccer exhibit. I mean, Dallas is so bullish on this opportunity and on this World Cup. They're also a returner. They hosted the '94 World Cup, but that was at the Cotton Bowl, right, kind of downtown, which is actually, well, let's say not downtown. I think it's Expo Park is the area, and you mentioned that big Fan Fest Park that's where that's going to be. I think that's where they have either the county or the state fair, massive month-long event every year. Yeah, right there, the Fan Festival. So yeah, really a place that is really just excited for this tournament and is looking to make the most of it. And it's the city that will host the most games, 9 matches, more than any other city.
I mean, Andrew, I mean, I know you have the B-roll, and we're very, very excited to see that. But can we just look at what what Dallas has created? I mean, to me, it looks like Dubai 2022
Hmm.
all over again because of the area. I mean, it was a very, very large activation area in Dubai as well. Um, but this here is really something. I mean, we want to talk about the good. And how big is this? Okay, so Fair Park transforms into a 1 million square foot celebration packed with live match broadcasts, concerts, games, food, and culture. Wow. Wow. So when you went to visit, were you able to see any of the active were you able to visit the park area, the fair, or was any of this, you know, being built? Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was able to visit the area because I went to see the professional women's team in Dallas, the Trinity. They play in the Cotton Bowl, and again, the Expo Park is kind of right next to the Cotton Bowl Stadium, and is kind of like part of that larger complex area. Um, I didn't see this was March, right? Earlier March. So, still have 3 months to get everything up. And I'm sure that now things are happening there. I'm going to put in, but I think given that they host a month-long event every year that draws millions of people, I feel like is a pretty good precedent for this type of event, that they're going to do here at Fair Park.
Okay, okay. In Dallas, if if I was in Dallas, is it in Arlington or is it in Dallas? Can we, share with our audience similar
Hmm.
to like Boston and Foxborough?
Hmm.
Where is the activation of the fan festival area versus the stadium? Because the stadium is AT&T Stadium, correct? And that's in
Yes,
Arlington,
that's in
correct?
Arlington. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we know how far the fan festival that's in Dallas, is this even in Dallas? Like, where is the Fair Park in
Yeah, this is
Dallas? How
in
far is
yeah, yep. So
No, no,
this
no, you
is
tell me.
Fair Park is in like the city, right? Yeah. So Fair Park is in the city. I know Arlington for me without traffic on like a Thursday afternoon, I think it was about 25 30 minutes from downtown out to Arlington.
Mhm.
Um, So this is more of, if you're going to stay downtown, if you're going to stay in, there's a variety of neighborhoods that are within, the city part of Dallas that are not, it's not Arlington, it's not Fort Worth, or any of the kind of the satellite suburbs, around. We'll see if the geography whizzes come for us in the comments here as well with the Dallas geography, Jamie, but I would say the suburbs around. So that is kind of it is a similar layout with to Boston, where you got the fan fest that is in the city itself proper, and then the stadium's outside. Um, I think that's going to be a positive for people who are staying in the city. That you will have that closer fan fest atmosphere, in addition to, part of me going there and our partnership with Visit Dallas was covering some of their best soccer bars in the city, right? So but everywhere that has a TV is going to have games on. Anywhere you want to have barbecue is going to have an opportunity to watch the game. um there is I was looking, I know, for like at least transport to the stadium. um, they were recommending on the Dallas host committee website, it's in the kind of the 30-40 minutes with traffic range. If you want to do public transit, I think it's like you take a train to a station near the stadium in Arlington, and then they're doing a special bus shuttle from there. So that's actually, they say, are going to be approximately an hour and a half for a fan. So again, I think it's going to be one of
Wow.
those things where it might not be as tough as Foxborough is, but again, isn't super convenient. And then we'll talk more about in that immediate corridor around there. But the sense I get is that it's going to be a little more accessible, but that most of the energy and atmosphere is going to be in Dallas itself, and they're in downtown or little pocket neighborhoods. And then the the stadium will feel a little bit separate from everything happening there.
Wow. 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 They I'm gonna see, and if we can find it, we'll link it to the show notes. If not, I'm gonna write myself a note. There is a FIFA website. I think I take that back. I'm not sure if it's FIFA, but there is a website. It's a nonprofit that has looked at the money raised for each city, and maybe our next episode I will pull it.
Yeah, that'd be great to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Because you mentioned the Scotland fans that are coming, they actually reached out to me and they are, oh, I'm gonna get it wrong, but the men in kilts. I am so sorry, but I know
Men
Ian.
in blazers, perhaps.
Me-
Might be the media guy or men in. There will be many men in kilts during the
Yes,
tournament. To be fair, Jayme, yes.
but this particular group, they are 15,000 strong, and over 5,000 of the 15,000 have no tickets
Wow.
to the games, but they are coming to the US, Mexico, and Canada for one or more of the games to just be around.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what you said, that you've experienced games where you didn't necessarily have a ticket, but you were there to be a part of the culture, to be a
Yeah.
part of that once in a lifetime moment. And I believe that's what brands and that's what a lot of these host cities are missing. Looks like Dallas got it right, but can you speak a little bit more to what that is on a fan perspective? Because there are board room behind closed doors conversations that I have had, Andrew, where we have had
Hmm.
people in the meeting that have said, that is ridiculous. Why would someone show up to an event without a ticket? Well, we're going to have the police there and they're going to ask people for their tickets. And it's like, no, that's not what happens at these type of global events. You
Yeah.
have thousands upon thousands of people that show up without a ticket to be with the moment. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the moment is a being. Can you
Yeah.
speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the closest thing we've got in like the US sports culture is like college football tailgates, right? Like, have you always had it, maybe when you were in college or where you're going to visit a friend, like, did you always have a ticket necessarily for the game? Or could you, maybe you did, but could you see that it could still be worthwhile to someone without a ticket just to be there for the build
Mhm,
up, for the atmosphere? It's very
mhm,
much like that with these international soccer tournaments, because you have people from everywhere. You're going to have, like I said, especially with the World Cup, 12 hours of games every day, right? Some of us, we might need a break from soccer after the World Cup. It's just going to be so much. But it's just people being together, that passion, the diversity of how people express it. They're going to be singing. Dallas is fortunate. Not only they have so many games, but they're pulling in a lot of the big name teams that are going to play there. Argentina will play there twice, right? I mean,
wow.
the Argentine fans, last year we had the Club World Cup where it was just some of their club teams, but the amount of videos that went viral of their fans on the beach in Miami a day or two before the game, or in Times Square, or at a bar in Nashville, that's where the games are being played. And yeah, they're going just for the atmosphere. They might not have a ticket, but they're going there just to be with their friends the time before and after the game,
Oh,
to
wow.
experience what it's like altogether. That is, I mentioned the running out of beer in Germany 2 years ago. For me, that type of experience was a bucket list. Having that experience in a very picturesque European square was just as great of an experience of actually going to one of the games, right? Like, I don't know how to I just have to paint that picture. I don't know if I can tell you why, but it just shows what it means to people to be together. And again, just how diverse and fascinating soccer is. And I think that that's something that, your diehards understand, but thinking about your more middle of the road people in the Dallas area who are just like, not really sure, but
Mhm.
I'm more football, more Texas Longhorns or whatever it is, but it's something that can pull you in, right? It's something that's going to draw you in and seeing that dimension of it. But yeah, I think that's not uncommon. Whether it's your Argentinas, England, the Netherlands will come through. They're going to be all in orange. I'm pretty sure that from space, some of these Google satellites will pick up little orange blotches all around Dallas during the tournament. It's just something that expression we don't really we don't really understand, except the closest would be like a college football type of thing where it's the day, it's not just the game.
Okay. You know, if you you brought something in, so, like, you brought something to my attention. I did not know that Dallas is has the most games. Is that what you
Yeah.
said? That Dallas has the
Hmm.
most games? How many games again?
They'll have 9. Yeah.
They'll have 9.
Yeah.
9 out of the 13. Wow. Okay. Is that right? 9 out of the 13?
9 games out of, I think there's like 100 something games in the whole tournament. Yeah, so 9
Okay,
9
I meant
games
just
during that time. Yeah.
North America. I'm sorry. So
Hmm.
we have 11 in the US.
Correct. Yeah,
11
host
games in
cities. Yeah, yeah. 11 of the cities are hosting. Yep.
okay,
Yep.
and then we have and then we have third no, oh, okay,
16
play that
total. Yeah, so
again.
16 in North America. So we got 2 in Canada, 3 Mexico, 11 in the States. But each of them are hosting at least four games over
I
the
see.
course of weeks, right? So I
Oh,
think, yeah, I think another piece of that is, I saw a report somewhere they were trying to estimate like the amount of time that a fan would spend in a city, right? And it's again comes back to our point of it's not a quick in and out. Some people will be saying, "Hey, I'm Argentine. I want to see one of the games in Dallas, but maybe I only have tickets for one game, but I'm going to stay in Dallas for a week and like that's going to be my base, and then I'm just going to on
mhm,
just because there's not a match in the stadium doesn't mean that there's not a vibe and atmosphere and experiences to be had.
mm, absolutely, absolutely, I I it I would be asking my clients one question. It's this method that I created called the experiential 5 plus method. And so when first start working with a brand and they're ready to activate, the first question, Andrew, I ask them is, what's our angle? And
Hmm.
it's like, what is the one thing you want? Is it, what is that one thing? Because what happens even if you look at Dallas, the park and how spread out it is. Also, as you mentioned, 9 games, you can try to be everywhere and be nowhere. You
Hmm.
can try to be everywhere, spread yourself so thin that you don't have any return on investment. And so it just, when you mentioned it, I said, that is so spread out. But if you have one angle, and so if you are activating in Dallas, it is a great opportunity. But I would say have one angle. And what do I mean by that? If it's 9 games, I would look at 1 game that you plan on activating and you're gonna hit it and you're gonna hit it hard. If I was a local mom and pop shop, I would not attempt, or if I was a bar, a restaurant, I would plan 1 host city party. 1 if it's 9 days, I would do 1 and say it's like, um Game 5. Game 5. Come to Jamie and Andrew's pub.
Hmm.
It's $50 cover. It gets you an appetizer. It gets you a sandwich. It gets you 1 beer, and you get to sit here and be with us for 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours, whatever the time is. And I would start selling those now. You have to have a ticket in advance to get in, and that way you can plan your menu, you
Hmm.
can plan with the demand surge, you can be ahead of it, because if it's going to be spread out and then you try to say, "Oh, host city party every single day," you are gonna run out of food, you're gonna run out of infrastructure, your team is gonna be tired. I would not do it. So, and that is what I would suggest to my clients who come in at a $50,000 retainer. So take it for what it's worth. But that is the same advice I would give them when we activate in Coachella. We do not try to activate at every entry point. We don't try to activate at at every stage. Like, if we're gonna activate close to the main stage, that's what we're doing. If we're gonna activate towards the entrance or if we're going to activate towards. So at Coachella, not trying to get off the subject, but at Coachella, there's an area where those that drive Ferraris, depends on what your car is. If you have a Bentley or a Ferrari or a Porsche, not even a Benz, you have to have
what about a
both.
15-year-old Honda Civic? Where do those people park? Where do they hang out?
I'm not sure, but they do have an area. But that's just how Coachella has
Mhm,
monetized the event. They have a premium place where if you drive one of those cars, you can purchase an area and you put up your tent. You put up your tent in that area. So there are certain brands that activate right around that area. But what I would always suggest is don't try to activate by the main stage, activate over there. It's just too much. You're all over the place. Focus, have one
mhm,
angle so you can get the best ROI. And so that's what I would suggest to Dallas. And I love that Arlington is built for events. They also have a strong business ecosystem that I really, looked at. I don't know if you interviewed any of the small businesses, Andrew, that you wanna, like, talk about, speak about, because it seems like a lot of the other big cities, even with Boston, they in the media, they were a lot of the chatter was like, "Oh,
mhm,
the small businesses, the local businesses, they don't want to sponsor the World Cup. We're having difficulties with getting them to sponsor." But those that I spoke to, even all the way up to billion-dollar annual revenue corporation was asking me, "How can they sponsor the FIFA World Cup?" So, I don't believe all of that I've heard, but I'd
mm.
love to know from you, what did you see in the, like, business ecosystem in Dallas?
Yeah, no, I think, like, from my personal experience, I found people much more willing to have the conversation and say, "Yeah, we need to do something." Whether it was like a more typical sports bar that was saying, "Hey, we don't quite have the soccer insight, like, how can we do a better job of catering to people in this community?" And also with a view of, you know, yes, it would be great to get X amount of people from England and Croatia and Japan who are going to be here for a week. But like, how do we start to cultivate a community beyond the World Cup, more locally, right? And create that space. So I think, whether it was that, whether it's, people who are in the soccer space or outside, like I said, from fans to small businesses, people are very bullish. And I think part of that is probably seeing, a lot of organizations, the bigger companies and things taking the lead. I know that Dallas, I believe, is going to be the headquarters of all like the broadcast media for the World Cup. So
Mm,
that's kind of going to be the central. So I think, again, it speaks to probably the value that the city has seen in having the World Cup there.
mhm,
And yeah,
mhm,
you mentioned like, the whole area around the stadium. You've got the baseball stadium. There's some kind of, I'm blanking, but I want to say it was like, one of the, it's like a kind of a theme park kind of thing. Like it is a huge complex. And then you just look at Dallas. I think it's a place that they want to do things in a big way, right? They want to be able to really party and celebrate and have a good time. And so whatever they do, they're going to do it big, right? They're taking your advice of they're not going to play in a bunch of different events. It's the World Cup, and they're gonna really go for it, both it around the stadium and the fan festival. So yeah, I think there's a lot in the good category for Dallas.
okay. I love that, I love that, I love that. Alrighty, so now let's get to the bad, because they all got a little bit of bad.
Everybody does. Yep, they all do.
Yes, okay, so, few things that we've seen in the news about Dallas. Dallas is not walkable. The fan movement depends heavily on cars, buses, rail, and rideshare systems. Because Dallas is not walkable, it is going to be very difficult for international visitors who are unfamiliar with American car dependencies. They will struggle. Also, the heat index for Dallas. Texas is a very hot place to be, especially in the summer. And let's just stop there and talk about those two things. Then we'll get into some other little bad things that we've heard about Dallas. So what do you think about Dallas being so big, everything big in Texas, but
Yep.
you can't walk it?
Yeah, it is definitely spread out. I think, like we said, even with the, in downtown, there's going to be little spots, but again, it's not walking distance to the Fan Fest. You're probably a 10-minute drive. It's accessible in that way. But yeah, it's a driving place, right? And the traffic definitely can be a challenge. I don't know what it is with Texas. I've never been somewhere. There's so many sneaky toll roads. Every highway you turn on, it's a different toll. Granted, it could be $1 or less, but I've never been on like that many exchanges. You got the easy pass and it's just constant. I will say, at least for fans, if they are going to be based, in particular areas, like there is decent train access from the airport. So I did take the train, into town when I had arrived. I did then have a rental car for my time while I was there to be able to get
Mhm,
around in the downtown and kind of the core. There is some like tram sort of streetcar access.
mhm.
Um, but again, it's like, how do you get there? And I think that's for fans, but also for brands thinking about the logic of it for a fan. Where are they going to be based? And again, coming to your point of what's your angle, what are you going to choose? I think thinking through that fan process will be important. Again, there's a couple little neighborhood sort of nexus areas around the city, and that's where all the vibe and energy is going to be. But it's just how people get there likely is going to be driving or ride share. So limited public transit options certainly within the city. And then, as we said, it's going to be kind of, they're saying, an hour and a half to get from downtown to the stadium. For a relatively newer system where you got to get a train and then a shuttle bus, that might be, depending on your timing, that might be optimistic. So that is going to be challenging. And the heat, people said that too. It can be hot. We're talking June, July in the heat there, so something to be mindful of.
Yes. If so Texas summer heat, it has to be in your execution plan. If it was a brand that was activating and it was my client, going back to my experiential 5 plus method, one of the 5 is execution plan, because what I notice is that sometimes you put great things on paper, but then you don't have anyone to execute it. You know, with marketing strategy, Andrew, I'm sure you work with some clients and they're like, yes, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then when it comes to executing, something like the ball gets dropped, no one gets back. And you're like, okay, what happened to the 20-page document? Oh, it never
Hmm.
got executed. Oh, okay, that's what we're doing. Because what happens is those that make the decisions, it has to go down to the operators
Right.
for them to execute. So if someone in the boardroom knows that it's going to be 100 degrees in Texas and they have a outdoor activation, why don't we just kind of pull this picture back up while
Hmm.
I'm talking? Let me just pull this back up. Okay. So this looks great. This is beautiful. But if all of these beautiful, you know, people are outside in 100 degrees, your brand activation has to be inclusive of this. It has to, or it's going to fail. People are going to need additional shade. They're going to need water. Everywhere you see that's uncovered area, if it's not a cool night, cool evening, if you have to have staff rotation. You're going to need to have like a contingency plan,
Hmm.
because even if you have staffers out here, Can you imagine a staffer being out here in 100-degree weather with no shade for a 6-hour, 8-hour
Yeah.
shift? That that becomes more of a medical issue because if there's no
Mhm.
covered area now they do say here that they have around 7,000 covered seats plus a sweeping grass hillside that you can choose to sit back in the shade. So it seems like someone is thinking about the heat, but
Mhm.
I do feel like even how they have this picture of that sun, it gets hot in Texas. It can get really, really hot, and what's going to happen is you're gonna have more demand surge of the activations that have built, indoor spaces. You're gonna have more of that, and the people may not necessarily be inside, to learn more about the actual sponsor or the brand. They're gonna be inside because it's hot. But that can actually be a good thing too. So, if you are going to offer, some ice cream, or if you have, the local, ice cream shop, you've got popsicles, you have, you know, vitamin waters, bottled waters, anything like that, even if it's like
Mm.
those little fans, I could see a company that sells those handheld fans and even the ones that have, like, the spray bottle with the fan. I know my husband ended up buying, like, several of them for $25 at Disney World
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
took the kids. It was out of necessity because it was so hot. That would be a story because you've got the demand surge and you have the need. So, if you have one of those, yes, they are gonna sell out real quick in Texas summer heat. So just kind of think about that one. But yes, this is great.